Welcome, Tim. Welcome, everyone. This is the Digital Culture Ideas Show and podcast. And today is super exciting for me because we are going live for the first time ever. So we're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So the audio is also going to be available for this on the Digital Culture Ideas podcast. So that's on Apple and Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcasts, in case you don't get time to watch the full video through today. So this is the show that helps individuals and companies really understand one of the biggest cultural shifts that's happening at the moment, and that is digital culture. So technology and the internet is significantly changing the way we think, interact, behave, and communicate. And I think particularly given COVID and the pandemic, that's just had a massive push forward as well. So it's a really important area that people need to learn more about. And to help us on that journey today is Tim Loftus. So we're going to have a chat about digital brand and marketing because that's a really important thing. So first, let me tell you a bit about Tim, and then we'll get into asking Tim some questions. So Tim Loftus is ChristchurchNZ's GM of Marketing, Brand and Communication. So he's been responsible for promoting Otatahi Christchurch locally, but internationally as well, as a real base camp for exploration and a modern hub of innovation. So being based in Christchurch myself, I've seen the work that you've done unfold, and it's been really awesome to see that brand for Christchurch really coming alive, particularly since the earthquakes that happened a few years ago. So, but Tim, you're actually on the move. So come February, you've got another really exciting role with another really cool company, which is Zealand Merino. So that's for the GM of Sales and Marketing there. So well done, because those two organizations I really love and I think are doing really cool stuff. So welcome, Tim. How are you?
Thanks, Hilary. Yeah, great. Thanks for the introduction. It's really awesome to be here. I've been really enjoying learning all about your podcast and following you along. So it's a real honor to be here.
Oh, well, it's just we're really lucky to have you on the show today. So thank you. Listen, just for a bit of context for our audience, it might be useful if you can maybe tell us a bit about yourself, you know, who you are, what you do, and just, a bit around your origin story would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my funny accent is Canadian. I should start out by that because everyone always wants to ask. But my mom and dad are from New Zealand originally, Dunedin and Christchurch respectively. So I grew up in North America, and I went to the University of North Carolina in the US, and I was really passionate my whole life about brands. And I guess since I was a kid, I've always been quite amazed by how people can be influenced. And you know, that notion of tribes and followers and feeling a sense of belonging and engagement. So I spent most of my career focusing on, I should also say on the side that I'm a very active outdoorsman. I love adventure racing and being in the mountains. And so I kind of combined those two things, and I spent most of my career in the outdoor gear industry, using the power of brands to inspire people to spend more time outside. And that quickly evolved into sustainability and driving a much more responsible and purpose-driven business model, and the power of engaging with consumers in new ways in this new paradigm, with this new sustainability imperative. And that's led me through a very interesting journey, but luckily one that got me back into the southern hemisphere. And I moved back to New Zealand in 2011 to complete my MBA, focused on sustainability. And I had the great opportunity of working with Icebreaker and Jeremy Moon and those guys on their sustainability journey as it relates to their brand engagement with their consumers. And then I ended up doing the same at Kathmandu for about 5 years before landing here in ChristchurchNZ and helping the revitalization of the perception of this incredible city. So it's been quite a journey, but it all has this kind of golden thread throughout it. And I'm just super passionate about brand and what it can do for people. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. That is useful. And, you know, I guess with every journey that people go on, often things aren't straightforward. And, you know, what have been some of the trials and tribulations, let's say, that you've experienced along the road to reaching your goals and having the impact you have?
Yeah, that's a good question. Excuse me. Trials and tribulations are interesting. They're inevitable, I guess. And I suppose more generally, the important parts of the trials and the tribulations, that's when you know you're onto something. When you have trials and tribulations, I think those are where the learnings are and the growth. And I think probably most of the trials and tribulations I think I've come across in my journey, or what I've been trying to achieve, or what the organization I've been working with has been trying to achieve, kind of all comes back to, I guess, fixed mindsets, maybe, or some people call them naysayers, or folks that just don't think that change is possible or necessary.
Yeah.
And I fully understand most of the rationale and reasoning for people thinking like that. But almost always those are the things that kind of get in the way of real innovation and change, is those fixed mindsets. Try to say it in a polite way.
Absolutely, yeah. And it can be really difficult, particularly when you're trying to make that change in organizations, if the fixed mindsets are there. I know some of the organizations I've worked in, like safety has been a really big thing for the organizations, and I have seen, for example, sometimes that safety card being used as a bit of a blocker for any kind of progress or moving forward, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And it's interesting, I should also mention, just as a side note, that I actually think that fixed mindset, it can be your own mindset. Like, I've found that sometimes I am my own blocker in a way. Like, it's really important to constantly be rethinking and re-evaluating your own perspective on things, because you may not even realize that you have a fixed mindset about something. And that's something you need to constantly try and disrupt.
Yeah, and that's tricky, isn't it? Because it's yourself. So sometimes you need that coach or prod from someone else to go, hold on, have you thought about this? And it's like, oh gosh, yeah, of course. That makes sense.
That's right, yeah.
I'd like to sort of really kind of focus down now on some of that kind of brand and marketing and communication kind of space that you work in. And I guess because it's something I've been really fascinated with for quite a while now, and I've definitely fallen in love with marketing and brand. But the reason that kind of happened was because I was working in the security space. As you know, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer of Cordia. But when I started getting into security, because I'm a psychologist by trade, I was trying to think about how do you get people motivated and how do you get people's attention on security when it might not be such a sexy subject, or people perhaps aren't interested, see it as a blocker, that kind of thing. And that's when I kind of discovered marketing, because I was looking for ways to change behavior, and I stumbled across a couple of key books that I read along the way. So one was Herd Theory by Mark Earls, and then another one was Nudge by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. And I started reading what they were talking about in the marketing and brand space, and obviously that industry has been trying to change people's behavior and get attention for quite a while, and there was a lot of learnings I took from that. So do you have any go-to branding and marketing influences that you'd like to share with people today?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have heaps of them, actually, to think about. But yeah, no, it's quite inspiring and interesting to hear your point from the security perspective. One thing that came to mind as you were describing that is even just what we've just gone through with this horrible COVID environment that we're dealing with. One of the things I was always really fascinated by with the New Zealand government's response was the instant jump to branding the response. So people don't necessarily notice, but you can immediately recognize the yellow stripes and the COVID commentary and even the sound of when an update's coming. And I thought that was quite genius from Jacinda and the team around just getting the consistency right at the very beginning, just to ensure that message will always cut through and people will quickly resonate. Hard to see it, but that's absolutely proactive branding,
Absolutely, really proactive. And actually, you're right, I hadn't thought about it as well, because there would have been a lot of comms going out about COVID from lots of different sources, but the government messages had to get through, didn't they?
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's, I guess, the interesting part about, obviously the ultimate challenge in marketing is cut through. I think the real challenge in brand is consistency. And I think, the books that you mentioned are spot on in these areas. Both Mark and Richard are awesome people to read. And so I guess I do have a few inspirational people that I follow quite a lot. Like I'm obsessed with podcasts, as many people are. And it's hard to steer away from, Tim Ferriss and his work, because he sort of talks to the best. But Seth Godin is a guy that comes to mind quite a lot. I mean, he's written 15 or 20 of the probably most prolific marketing books. But oftentimes just listening to him have banter is quite interesting. And he thinks just a little bit differently about how things can come across. But I'd probably say the one that jumps out at me is Simon Sinek, who's so popular and famous for his YouTube work and his TED Talks and so on. But the beauty of Simon's work to me is just the utter simplicity of it. And I think that at its core, brand marketing in particular is a very simple endeavor. It's not an easy one, but it is certainly simple. And I think the beauty of what Simon Sinek's work is just coming back to the basics and trying to keep things as simple as possible. Because if it's complicated to yourself or to your team, it's definitely not going to resonate to the general public. I also think that the other guy that inspired me early days was Yvon Chouinard, who is the genius behind the Patagonia brand. And he's not a branding guy and not really even a business guy, but he definitely understood the simplicity of brand consistency and authenticity. And he wrote a great book called Let My People Go Surfing, which kind of encapsulates his philosophy on things. But yeah, branding is quite a simple thing, but very complicated to get right.
And there's obviously lots of crossovers with the psychology kind of discipline with branding and marketing. But the key thing, it's simple once you know what your observation is. So the key thing is understanding what is people are doing, what is happening, and then you can understand kind of why they're doing it a lot more. But it's sometimes it's simple once it's explained to you, but it's not simple when you're just trying to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's totally right. It's all about the insight, isn't it? And definitely true. Yeah.
Look, I find myself, and I see other people, we're communicating a lot more online now. So through social media, even myself, developing my brand. So this digital culture ideas brand, as well as Cordia as well. And there's an aspect of that which you're kind of putting yourself out on a limb. It's a little bit scary from time to time, particularly when you're trying new things out. And but we are seeing more individuals and organizations doing this. And but it can put people in a bit more of a vulnerable spot. So what advice do you have for some of the people and businesses, I guess, as well, who are building their brand online? So really trying to give it a go.
Yeah, that's a great question. All I can think of in the most genuine way is just being yourself and being as authentic and honest as possible. I think about that definitely from a corporate brand or company brand point of view, but obviously from personal brand point of view as well. People really, really engage with honesty and radical transparency. People want the connection and the human side of what you're on about, what you're trying to achieve and what you're bringing to the world, and they really celebrate, the truth and that real deep connection. And it's all too often people think of marketing as kind of this a facade that is put on, but you'll find that where the true brand loyalists really are is in the places that are most authentic. I often think about this when I was at Kathmandu, the outdoor brand here. We used to do these super flashy marketing campaigns, very, very expensive photo shoots, very, very flashy, high production advertisements. And we would launch it all to market. And we would also include a behind the scenes reel, which was, maybe 30 or 45 seconds of the talent, laughing or tripping or falling and, having fun. And every single time, 100% of the time we launched a campaign, we did this. And 100% of the time, the behind the scenes video had twice as much engagement as any of the flashy high production value advertisements. And it just, to me, that's a great angle of what people are looking for. They're looking for connection, and I feel like when building a brand, there's nothing more important than just truth and honesty and transparency.
That's true. If I relate that to my own experience, I have found that some of the videos that I've done where I haven't actually got makeup on have done much better than when you've kind of prepared a bit more and you've got your hair looking good. It's kind of cool to what you're talking about. Like, people do want the real thing.
They want the real thing.
Yeah.
And they want to relate. They want to relate too. Like, I found that too in the sustainability journey for many organizations, is that people, they want to go out and tell everybody all the great things that they're doing. But oftentimes it's telling them the challenges and the hard things and the things they don't really know yet. That's what people want to know about,
Yes,
so you gotta kind of bring it all, I think.
Totally. Looking at this branding and marketing space going forward, like I think it's at a really interesting place because, life is digital, business is digital, and it's primed as one of the key areas for businesses and people to think about. But I wonder how it will change over the next wee while and how it will evolve. Do you have any insight into or predictions around, how branding and marketing will change in the next, few years?
I wish I really did, because I think I wish I did, because I think one of the things that's so difficult about marketing is that it very naturally and organically changes so quickly. It almost changes as quickly, as our society does, in many ways faster. And it's. But I think one thing is for sure is we are moving farther and farther away from that flashy, high production, pretend to be what you aren't. And we're getting closer and closer to that absolute truth and authenticity. And I think the consumer is already there. And I can't imagine the industry really ever going back. And so I think the future is further in this space of radical transparency. It's closer to the consumer, and it's much more intimate, and a little bit less about loyalty, and a lot more just about that authentic connection. Yeah.
And I guess it's an interesting time for brands as well, or even organizations, because even if I think of the leadership in organizations and CEO positions and things like that, I feel like they're more behoved to be out in front than ever before. And sometimes that's a natural space for CEOs. I mean, obviously they have to, speak to their organizations, but for some it's also not. So it's interesting time for the leadership of businesses, and because there's the brand of the individual but also the brand of the company, and that's kind of blurry.
Yeah, it's quite challenging. And I guess the other piece is the customer, right? The customer, I mean, obviously the customer is everything. But it almost doesn't really matter what you say anymore, because there's reviews all over the internet and people talking to their friends and family everywhere at such a scale that, that truth and authenticity and true connection and involvement with the customer is critical, because they're your judge and they're talking to their friends. And I read a really fascinating statistic from our analytics group, particularly about the millennials group, and it was a crazy statistic that 85% of the people surveyed in this age group, 85% of them suggested they would never buy anything unless it was recommended by a friend. That's absolutely incredible to think about. So that's a shift of a democratic capitalism that we've not seen before. That's quite exciting if done well,
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. Hey, listen, I'd like to now kind of move to maybe talk a bit about leadership. And when I was doing my research on you, Tim, I obviously with the campaign for Otatahi Christchurch around Explore in 2018, really exciting campaign. Like, I loved watching the videos that you were producing around that for Christchurch. But in one of the talks that you did when you were launching that, you quoted Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is actually a physicist. And I love this quote, so I'm going to read it here. So he said that kids should be allowed to break stuff more often. That's a consequence of exploration. And exploration is what you do when you don't know what you're doing. I really like that. And obviously you did as well, because you chose to speak about it during this presentation. But I liked it because quite often I feel like I'm out of my depth, just to be honest. I feel like I'm constantly on this learning mission, and that's what this show is all about, and why I want to speak to people who inspire me, like yourself, so that I can grow and be better and learn along the way myself. So what about that quote jumped out for you, and what do you think it can teach us about how we need to lead people as well?
That's a good, that's a great quote. I partially like it because my kids are constantly breaking things, and I need to have a reason why that's a good thing. But yeah, I think the discovery is never ending. I really admire your work and what you're doing about constantly looking for inspiration and and feeling like you don't know where you're going. I think that's a really good thing, because honestly, I don't believe there is a destination. Life, and particularly work, is really all about constant learning. And if you feel like it's probably a good sign to try something different. I think that quote for me really resonates because, there's a couple great quotes. I'm obsessed with quotes, but things like, fake it till you make it and this sort of thing are always kind of funny commentary. But the one that comes to mind the most for me is an old Henry Ford quote, which he basically says, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And the depth of insight on that, in that you literally create your own reality. Like, if you think you can't do it, then you won't be able to, And so I just love the idea of exploration and pushing the boundaries and trying. I also love Thomas Edison used to always say about, he tried 9,000 ways before he figured out the light bulb. So the discovery was actually 9,000 ways that wouldn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those are some really cool quotes. Yeah, and I remember reading that one for the first time as well. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I was like, hold on, what does that mean? Oh, okay.
Right. It's really
cool.
It's a good self-check to remember that you're actually in the driver's seat. It's not an external influence, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because too often we're held back by worrying what other people, will think about us or think we can do, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really keen to hear what your focus is going to be for the next 12 months. You're obviously starting a new role, so there's a whole bunch of things going on there. But what do you think your focus will be for the next 12 months?
Yeah, the next 12 months is interesting. It's such a weird working environment we're in at the moment. It's such an unprecedented time. So it's, the key for me in the next 12 months is going to be really, really exciting. Obviously starting a new job with the New Zealand Merino Company, and that's a really exciting industry. And an amazing organization that has great ambitions of really pushing innovation, ushering in regenerative agriculture and taking sustainability to a whole nother level for our country. And I think that's an ambition that I really am excited about being a part of. Traditional views of how to do things are crucial, and they're kind of what got us to where we are today. But the reality is the world is changing so dramatically. It was already, but now even more so. And so constantly thinking about new ways of doing things kind of is the name of the game.
Absolutely. And agriculture is such an important industry for our country as well. Like, it's been like the real backbone. And the innovation going on in that space is really cool. And you're right, it is about sustainability, growing meat in a test tube, and maybe then, the real meat is like a luxury item, and just rebalancing the whole agriculture industry for globally, really. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and anything's possible. Like, I think if we can really envision a better future, there's no reason why we can't be desperately working towards achieving it on a daily basis. So I'm kind of a relentless optimist, and I'm super excited about what this crazy last year in the world might end up producing. Like, I think it's been a horrible, transition of events, and a massive wake-up call for the world in so many ways. But we've got to be able to see this amazing opportunity that could come out of it to rethink and reposition. So I think New Zealand is very, very well positioned to help lead the world out of it. So we just have to take that opportunity and run, I think.
Absolutely. So Tim, if people want to find out more about you, where can they go to do that?
To find out more about me, probably LinkedIn. To be honest, I'm obsessed with LinkedIn. I think it's such a brilliant channel. And I endeavor to be far more involved and engaged with the LinkedIn channel, just for all the obvious reasons we've just talked about. So I'll probably be hanging out there as much as I can. Yeah.
And so just in summary then, do you have any final words for our community, the Digital Culture Nation?
Maybe just say, stick it out there. It's not all bad in the world these days. I think, it's a great opportunity to join you here today, and wonderful to meet and connect, and obviously to reach out to others. So I guess my only message is seize the opportunity, and see the glass half full, because it really is a great opportunity on our doorstep right now, and I think we can grasp it and run with it for sure.
I love that. Thanks, Tim. Look, thanks so much for coming on the show today. All the best for your new exciting role with New Zealand Merino. They really are lucky to have you, and I've been lucky to have you on this show today. So thank you so much. I look forward to watching your next step with NZ Merino, and seeing what you can bring for them in terms of branding and marketing and sustainability as well. So thanks so much, Tim. Take care.
Thank you, Hilary. Much appreciated. Great talk.